actually right over there in that office building. And I just started working there about a month ago. Prior to that, I was a software consultant for 3 years at a place called ThoughtWorks. And so as a consultant, we would go in to clients and kind of try to encourage them to do some of the best practices that we believed in. And so trunk-based development is one of them. And this TalkBack idea actually kind of formed one day when someone on our Slack channel talked about like, oh, I just started doing gitflow and I love it, and this is why. And I had actually also started doing gitflow as like our development practice at the client because that's what the client requested, and I hated it. And so I came in and I was like, this is terrible, and I think that you should do trunk-based development. And everyone goes, what's that? And so I started trying to kind of like explaining what it was a bit, and then people were like, that sounds crazy. And I said, yeah, but here's like why it's better. And then we kind of had a really cool conversation, and I realized, oh, you're poking holes in all my argument, and I really needed to hear that so that I could kind of better formulate like my ideas onto why I thought trunk-based development was cool. And so that's what I'm here to show you tonight, or to share with you tonight. So we'll start with a nice little definition. So trunk-based development is a source-controlled branching model where developers collaborate on code in a single branch called trunk, or if you're using Git, that's usually called master. And you resist any pressure to create other long-lived development branches by employing documented techniques. You therefore avoid merge hell, you don't break the build, and you live happily ever after. I will put a quick disclaimer in here. I've really only done pure like trunk-based development successfully at a client once in my 6 or so clients working at ThoughtWorks. We could only really make it work once because a lot of clients require that you do pull requests, and that's kind of like a governance thing that a lot of companies require that you do. So I'm going to kind of talk about what is trunk-based development, kind of in its like most happiest, happily ever after state, and then kind of like realistically if you have like organizational restraints or things like that that you have to work around, which I'm sure you probably do, then kind of what are some ways that you can maybe make your development practices a little bit easier and nicer in the meantime. So first of all, a lot of people think it's just like pure chaos, and it can be. But before we talk about how to avoid the chaos, I'll tell you some of the cool things that trunk-based development gives you. So how many people have seen a list of branches on your repo that looks like this? I blurred out all the names, but it's like, here's a million really old branches. Some of them have been merged. Why aren't they deleted? I don't know. Some of them updated last year, updated 11 months ago. Who cares? Like, that code is very old, it's stale, it's not helping anyone by living on this branch. And then you go to the person who like wrote that code and you say, can I delete this branch? And they go, no, I need it. What do you need it for? I don't know. So trunk-based development, you avoid having a lot of long-lived branches, and you avoid this whole thing of like dead code where someone had a brilliant idea to do a thing, and they did it on a branch, and 11 months later, here we are, please delete this. Get rid of that. You also hopefully avoid a lot of merge hell, so maybe you're working on one branch over here, and your friend is working on another branch over here, and then one person finally gets their code into master after PR, or you put it into develop first if you're doing gitflow, and then whoever goes first wins because they don't have to deal with the merge hell, but then you do. So if you're pushing into master constantly, consistently, and other people are pulling from master constantly, then it kind of avoids some of this pain. Obviously, you're still going to get some merge pain, but it's not going to be as drastic as if you're waiting days and days and days to get your code into the shared main branch. So less merge hell. This is a diagram of gitflow. If you've ever used gitflow, maybe you understand this. I don't. I don't want to understand this. It's like, we've got master. You can have some hotfix branches. You have release branches that you cut at certain times, which is probably a good practice. You should probably cut a release branch. I think a lot of people who do trunk-based development believe in having release branches, and that's great. But then you also have this other main branch called develop. Yeah. Cool. And you have a bunch of other feature branches. This is crazy. I don't like it. No offense if you do this. My company, I think, does this now, and that's a whole thing. No, bye. And then here's a fun video. This is a pull request. I'm going to play this video, and this is a pull request. Oh, shoot. Wait. What? Shoot. Look. There we go. I saw this, like, last week. Just watch this. What happened? I don't know. This is one pull request. It lived for maybe like 3 weeks. Maybe longer. I don't know. It finally got merged. It was terrible. I tried to look at it. No. I don't know what happened there. I ignored it. Goodbye. Okay, and then one of the other cool things I feel like about trunk-based development is it really helps build trust in your team really quickly, right? You kind of have to assume that foundation of trust because you're trusting your other teammates to push code into master very frequently. And you know, if they break the build, they're gonna go fix it. And we'll talk about builds and stuff in a second. Because I'll talk about what you really need to make this work. But I feel like in companies that I've been into where it's like you have to do a pull request, you know, I get that that's the thing and that's like a foundational model and things like that, but sometimes it's just like this is, you know, it's like everyone has to like rubber stamp me. And a lot of times pull requests can be just like, give me a green check mark so I can do this, even though it was 3 lines of code. So I feel like it kind of helps a team, especially if you're forming a new team, kind of trust each other very early on. So how do we avoid chaos? Like what are kind of the things that we need to make trunk-based development work? First, you need a really strong build pipeline. You need stages that do tests. You need like a lot of different kind of tests, so like unit tests, integration tests, maybe some functional tests, things like that. You might want to have things like linters, things that kind of help enforce, programmatically help enforce those coding standards, maybe some security tests, etc. You really need like something that's very strong that will, you know, if there's a problem, it will immediately alert you to a problem. And then you also need a really strong team culture around the build pipeline. So if something, you know, it really helps if you have like a team room that has a TV on it, and when the build pipeline is red, then that whole TV says like red, or maybe it makes a noise. You know, something that like, and then it's like everyone has ownership to say like, oh, I'm the one who just pushed in that code and I broke it. Let me revert and go figure out what I just did, and then like go push it again. You need really to kind of have that ownership. And then you need to like make sure that like, if there's a red build, I'm not gonna go try to push my code. I'm gonna wait, maybe see if my team member needs help, reach out to them and see if, you know, I can help them figure out what that issue was. You need frequent code reviews. So that's what like pull requests I think are really for, is for code review. You wanna make sure that everyone kind of understands what code other people are pushing in. So something that I've seen really successfully, that one team that I did get to do trunk-based development very well, we would have what we call show and tells. And that would be just kind of like an ad hoc random thing. We would all be like sitting in the same team room. So if it kind of came to a point where I just finished something really cool, I would say, hey, let's have a show and tell. And we would all just kind of stop what we were doing or find a natural stopping point, plug our computers into the big TV on the screen, and go through the code that like I just wrote. And I would talk to my team about it. I would kind of tell them things. We would have a conversation about it. And then if that, you know, I would get feedback, which was really cool. And I mean, it wasn't super distracting because it was like we're, you know, sharing parts of the code base that, you know, we might not have touched in a while. And so it was really helpful to kind of get that feedback pretty quickly. And we would do that at least twice a week, sometimes more. And it was just really, really cool. Something else that I've seen is like if you're about ready to push code into master, maybe get a second pair of eyes on it, or a third pair of eyes if you're pairing. Just like, you know, kind of go over your code with someone else, explain it to them if like they've never seen it before because they probably haven't, and make sure that, you know, they are kind of giving you like some sort of sanity check. And then the other thing you can do is pair programming. So at ThoughtWorks, we pair programmed all the time, like literally 24/7, all day, every day. This is how I am writing code, is with like another person. And that's kind of one of the strongest ways to make trunk-based development really good, because you have 2 people making decisions about the code that you're writing at all times. And I could give a whole different talk about pair programming. I think it's super beneficial, and it's you know, baking quality in from the get-go. And you know, it's like 2 brains, 1 problem. You have way less like bugs and issues down the line. And so, that way you're always getting like two people, at least two pairs of eyes see it before it even goes to master at all. But this might not be possible for your team. Great, me neither. My new team, this would never work. And maybe it would one day, but like not in the state that we are right now. So here are a couple of things maybe you can think about on your teams and see how you can maybe implement these changes smallly and slowly to try to reduce some of your like merge hell or like frustration with how long it takes to get your code into master. So set a goal for yourself. Try to like create a PR and merge your code into master every day, every single day. See what you can do. Obviously that might not be possible sometimes because PRs sometimes take a long time of back and forth, but see what you can do. Maybe challenge the rest of your team members to try to do the same and see, try it for a sprint, try it for a week, and see what happens. See how your team can respond to that. That involves like really small and frequent pull requests. So you don't have to wait until your whole entire like feature or story card is complete to merge your code into master. Actually, please don't. Please don't wait until you're done with the whole thing, because you want to integrate that code as quickly as you can, and you want your changes and other people's changes to live happily on a branch as long as it can, because if you wait and then it's like a big bang over here and a big bang over there, things will break and you don't know where that brokenness happened or started. That means that you should maybe try to be more attentive to your team members' PR. So if someone posts a PR and they ask you to review it, try to find a stopping point. And it's good for you to take a break because your brain will keep working on whatever problem that you are thinking about in the back of your head while you're taking this break. Think about someone else's code and give them feedback quickly, and give them suggestions and things like that. But also like don't expect perfection on every pull request, right? Like we're supposed to be iterating on software development. That's what software development is all about. So don't if something's not perfect, then it's one thing to pull out or point out a bunch of like errors or things like that, or things that might be buggy. But like if it's like I think that if you do this, it would be better. Maybe keep that in mind for the next time. Like I really want you to keep that in mind. But like as far as this goes, this looks great, and we can talk about bigger ideas. Like a pull request doesn't have to be the end-all be-all for putting in code, because your code becomes legacy code the second that you commit it, essentially. So you always want to be revisiting that code and like how effective it is as often as possible. You want to pull in master often to avoid merge hell. Like I pull all the time. If I come back from lunch, I will pull in from master just to make sure that I'm integrating with other people's changes as quickly as possible. And obviously I would probably know if a change happened because a PR would have gone through and had to approve it and do that whole song and dance. But just make sure that you're also pulling in other people's changes so that you save yourself pain as quickly as possible. Another challenge, kind of similar to that, merge your code all the time, or once at least every day. Don't let a shared branch exist longer than a day. That whole list of branches, don't do it. Try not to. Try to encourage your teammates not to. And I mean, like, ask them. Say, like, I see this branch has been stale for 11 whole months. Can we delete this? I think we can delete this. And you probably can. Do code show and tell. So this is something different, obviously, than maybe what you're used to, but see if you can get everyone in the room and say, like, let's just, show each other our code and talk about it for an hour. Try it out. Maybe it is a more, like, digestible format than a whole PR, right? Because you have someone like, I'm going to come show off this feature, and this is exactly how I built this button, or whatever, and I can kind of talk you through my ideas, and then you can understand my ideas, and you can understand why I made these decisions, and we can talk about them, and but then we all become better, like, stewards of this whole code base together, instead of just like, I looked at the PR, it looks fine, check mark. Cool. And that was all of the kind of main points that I have. Like I said, I'm Kathryn. I work at rewardStyle. We are hiring, so if you are looking, I don't know exactly the positions we have open, because I also just started there, but if you want to come ask me questions, I'm happy to chat. If you have any questions right now, do we have time? Yeah, ask questions. Great, thanks.
Anyone have a question for Kathryn?
So in my new company, yes, everyone's in the same office for the most part, like all of our engineers are. But in my past company at ThoughtWorks, I actually remote paired like a good like 2 projects where so my most recent project in ThoughtWorks, the one I left right before I left, was based in like Albany, New York, but there wasn't enough space literally in the client's like building for all of us to be there at the same time. So we were all kind of remote, like in different ways. We would kind of take turns going up there. So I would like, we hop on a Zoom call, and then in Zoom you can like give control of your screen to someone else, and we would pair program like that. And if your Wi-Fi connection is spotty, it's a little painful sometimes, but it really, honestly, pair programming remotely made me so much better at communicating my code, because there's no body language of the person next to me. I don't know what they're thinking unless they're talking about it. So if I'm like sitting there thinking for a while, you know, someone's gonna say, "Are you there? Did I lose you? Like, what's going on?" When like clearly, if you know you're sitting next to me, you could see that I'm thinking. But you know, so it's like, I found a lot of value in that, being able to like communicate my thoughts about the code with words, because a lot of times, you know, you might point and click around, and that like obviously doesn't translate through a shared screen.
So like, this sounds really awesome, and I'm just thinking about like at my current team that we work on, we do a lot of like database changes and like things that are not necessarily like code related, like PR related, like we'll change like feature flags remotely or like whatever. Like what are the major cons in like a big, huge like code base like that? Just because like there's a lot of things that feed into other things, and it's like kind of microservices, kind of not. So anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that you said feature flags, which was a whole thing I didn't even get into because it was just going to take, I didn't have time to formulate my thoughts essentially about feature flags and toggles and stuff. So like those are super helpful if you have like a bunch of features that you're developing but aren't done yet. So you know, if you have a facing UI and you know you're adding a button for a credit card ad, but that credit card ad is not done yet, you want to make sure that like that code is integrated as quickly as possible. But when you push to production, obviously that feature flag needs to be off. So just kind of like do things like that where you're hiding features that are still in iterative development. When you have things in prod, you need to make sure that you're keeping track of those things. Another thing is kind of like, if you are using feature flags, you want to make sure that like you're kind of doing testing between the different features and how those things interact with each other. So like if you have a credit card ad and a button that says email me about some things or whatever, you want to make sure that when both of those like feature flags are on, it works, and when one is on and one is off, that works, and the vice versa way. And so that is kind of like a exponential, what is that factorial thing where all of the combinations you have to like test, and that can get really crazy really fast. So that's like another thing. Yeah, database migrations, that's a clear question. I don't do a lot of those anymore.
I don't know, I just sort of think about like all the different things that are going on at the same time, and, like even on just like my team or whatever, because like there's so many like front end changes, back end service changes, like database changes, like it sounds great. Like I would love to do that, but it just that would.
That's related to my goals too. Like, how big of a team were you working on?
Oh, it was very small. I forgot to say that. It was very, very small. So we had one team, and we owned a whole greenfield like app, and we there were like 2.5 dev pairs, so like 5 human developers, sometimes 6 because our team number changed or whatever. But yeah, it was a really small team, and we didn't have to integrate with a lot of other organizations. Or a lot of teams in the organization, but yeah, I kind of tried to do it in, so like that's kind of where like pull requests can be helpful, like in, I'm talking about this credit card app feature toggle, because that was the project that I actually did at an airline, and so we were trying to do the best chunk-based development that we could, but we had to go through PRs because that was like a governance rule, and so that team actually required a lot of working with things across the board, and we controlled like the full stack of this one credit card ad between like the API and the mid-level API and the front end, which meant that we were coming in and working on 3 different teams' code bases, because we were like the first full stack team that organization had ever seen. And so like we had to do PRs, but we were still, you know, pushing to master every day. Like we had our PRs going through pretty quickly because it was, you know, we all had that mindset. We were all people from my past company. We were all thought workers, so we weren't working with a lot of clients who were like, a pull request can take 7 years. We were like, we want this pull request to take, you know, 30 minutes. And we were pushing our code into master, and then they had a really huge QA process. Like we had our own team QA that we brought on, but then they also had a whole like, when they cut a release, so we would cut release branches at the end of every month or something like that, and then it would go a whole month of like the QMO testing, which stands for quality something something. I don't know, it was their thing. And so a whole month of like integration testing and making sure things would go back, and if we had to do like a hot fix, we would just, you know, push a hot fix to the branch and things like that. So it's like pure chunk-based development. You probably do need a small team, and you have to be really careful about how your code interacts with other people's. So if you're an organization where everything is interacting, which you probably are, because that's most projects, is, you know, lots of things interact with lots of other things. You know, see if you can make your pull requests at least go faster and things like that. See if you can, you know, get your team all kind of centered around, like, I want to get our code into master. I don't have to wait on pull requests, because that is just like time wasted.
Any more questions for Kathryn? My last question.
Yes.
Where can I go if I want to spend more time thinking about / considering trunk-based versus other kinds of like gitflow development?
That's the thing that I forgot. I was going to make a whole slide that had like references and things like that. But I think, yes, I will definitely post some references and things in Slack, because I have a whole slew of Google tabs, because I was kind of looking at things. Someone who talks a lot about it is Martin Fowler. He works at ThoughtWorks, where I came from, and he has, you know, a whole blog and a whole community. He's like one of the fathers of Agile. He signed this manifesto or whatever. Whatever. But he has a really cool blog, and talks, and a lot of the kind of things that I believe about chunk-based development and things like that come from like his blog. ThoughtWorks really indoctrinated me, obviously. Change is hard. Anyway. That's all. I will put stuff on Slack. Yes?
Speaking of change is hard, you mentioned earlier when you were trying to get your team on board with the chunk-based sort of situation, they were very confused. How do you deal with when you know you have a good idea and there's a lot of pushback?
It's so hard. It's so hard. Yeah, so I just started at my new company, and I kind of came on this team that used to be 2 teams, and now we're 1 team, and it's just like, what? And so that's really tough, and for me, it's been a lot of like, this is terrible, that's terrible, I want to change everything, but obviously I can't do that all at once. And so I think it's a lot of what you need to do is kind of think about like what are the small things that you can change that might be painful at first to people, but like, you know that it's gonna pay off. And try to talk to people on your team, like go to coffee with them and say, hey, you know, I know this is really slow, and I think that maybe we could do this. What do you think about that? And see if you can get that person to like be your ally. So when you like bring up your idea in front of the whole team, and someone goes, that's terrible, we're not gonna do that. This other person's in your corner saying, oh, well, I think it's a good idea. We should we should hear her out. We should talk about this. We should try it. You know, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? You're gonna try something for a sprint. 2 weeks later, you determine it didn't work, or people are too resistant. Okay, maybe that was too much at one time. Take a step back, take like a baby step forward. You know, it's a lot of that, and I think that definitely try to take advantage of times when your team is kind of reforming. So like if you get a new team member, or your team loses people, or you know there's a reorg or things like that, that's a really good kind of way to checkpoint and say like, hey, everyone, can we have like a team norming session? I actually had one of those today, 5 hours ago. And it was kind of cool because we all kind of got to share our ideas and opinions and kind of form like a working agreement in terms of like workflow and things like that, and how we're gonna, we didn't even get through half of it. We have to have like maybe 2 other meetings, it's fine. But like if you can kind of take advantage of like if people are new, you know, you kind of want to norm as a team together, and you want to revisit the way that you're doing things and not just stay stagnant. Also, retros. Do you do retros? Ooh, okay, that's a whole nother topic. I could go another topic. Yeah, let's talk about retros. Find me after. Everyone, please let's thank Kathryn.